from the Washington, D.C. area. It's the Inside Scoop, all the news that our viewers want to know. Now, here's the host.
Welcome to Inside Scoop. I'm your host, Catherine Reed, and joining me tonight are David Broder, president of SEIU 512, and Maya Castillo, who is the Virginia State Director. So welcome both of you to the show. I thought we would start with some pretty basic things like I Googled myself. SEIU stands for Service Employees International Union. So we'll start by talking about unions. Not everybody thinks they know somebody who's in a union. Who might people know in our community right now here in Fairfax County who might be in a union?
Well, if you send your kids to the schools, then you know union teachers. And if you go to your local fire station, you know your union firefighters. And for folks down in Hampton Roads, they know their union steelworkers. So whether it's librarians or your local park staff, folks are coming in contact with good union workers every day.
And so home health care workers are also a group of people that we might not think of as immediately being in a union. But that is a growing career, a growing industry, because we have an aging population, and there's a lot of reasons that we need more home health care workers. And that is kind of a large group under the SEIU.
That's right. Everyone that I talk to, Catherine, has a loved one who's being cared for and who wants to be cared for at home, whether it's an aging parent or grandparent, maybe a child with autism. Home care is one of the fastest growing professions, and 500,000 home care workers are united together in SEIU, and we're starting to lift wages and make sure that it's a quality job so that we can recruit and retain the kind of workforce that we need, because as baby boomers get ready to retire and want to age in their homes, don't want to age in nursing homes, we are woefully short on the number of home care workers that we need to be able to make sure everyone leads a full life in their community.
So Maya, as a state director, so what comes under the umbrella of each? Are there separate chapters in the union? How does that work? I know David is SEIU 512. What does that mean in your world, in your context?
So in my context, that means that we're fortunate enough in the Commonwealth to have two SEIU locals that have members here in Virginia. So that's David's local, SEIU Virginia 512, and another union local, SEIU 32BJ. And so the way that works for us in our union is that we represent workers in healthcare, we represent workers in the public sector, and we represent workers in what we call property services. So in various states and various regions, there are any one of those that can be represented, or all three. Here we're fortunate to have all three of those represented, and I'm fortunate enough to be able to work with both locals in making sure that what we do here in Virginia is coordinated, but also effective for our members and for our communities.
So let me I'll ask both of you, how did you end up being in leadership organizational roles with the union?
Well, for me, Catherine, I literally wouldn't be here today if it weren't for unions. I'm the great-grandson of immigrants, of Eastern European Jews who fled Russia and Poland because they were being persecuted and came here with literally nothing on their backs. And over the course of a few generations, my family entered the great American middle class because of unions, because my grandparents on my father's side were in unions, and when they faced persecution as Jews on the job, the union was there to protect them, make sure that they had a living wage, made sure that they had retirement security in their old age. On my mom's side, it was unions and good government policies, I should say. It was the GI Bill that sent my grandfather, my mom's father, to be the first in his family to go to college. And then my mom, who was a union art teacher, it was because of her union contract that I had health care growing up, that I could afford to go to college. And so that has been my family story, a story of unions, a story of good government policies that allowed me to be here. And I do this every day because I'm deeply worried that for my two daughters, those same systems that supported me are under attack every single day. And we see that in this election. We're going to see that in the upcoming General Assembly session. And we've lost a little bit of the balance of power. And so Maya and I and our members get up every day day and try to make sure that we're fighting for an economy that works, not just for our members, but for everyone in the community.
I think that's so important, and I know that your union is working for raising the minimum wage, and in some instances that might be the only thing people know is the fight for 15, but there's a lot more to it than that.
Oh, sure. I am, David just talked about his family and his immigrant story, and my mother is a Mexican immigrant. She came here with her family, and as a young person, actually as a child, as a 5-year-old, picked cotton in the fields in California, and they came to this country because it was and still is a land of opportunity, and knew that there were avenues for that opportunity, and opportunities in education particularly. And so I was always raised to not only to fight for what's right for my family, but also to advocate for those in the community. I also have 2 daughters, and I can't imagine not wanting the same for everyone else's children as I want for my own. And so for us, that means not just an economy that works for everyone and focusing on the fight for 15. It also means immigration reform. It means racial justice and criminal justice reform, affordable health care, affordable child care. These are all opportunities and paths for working families to be able to move up, and without those, we lose a lot of folks.
And I think that is so important, because I know that you all work with other nonprofits and other organizations, and you really are about advocacy and helping people understand the path to better public policy. I don't think people really think there's a burden on them personally for better public policy, but I think union members, because that's just part of buying into the fact that you are both a member of a union, and that comes with both rights and responsibilities, which basically mirrors our democracy, which also comes with rights and responsibilities, although some people opt out of those rights and responsibilities, and coming up to this election, we'll see how many opt in to actually use their vote as the path to better public policy. So, the 40-hour work week, we can thank unions for that. Regulations around child labor, we can thank unions for that. But a lot of people might have learned that in their 8th grade civics class. But what we know about unions today really is probably not on a lot of people's radar. And I think we need to help them understand what it is you're doing, not just for your membership, but what your memberships are doing for the community.
I think that's right. When unions are strong, the economy works for everyone. I'll tell you a story of one of our members, a woman named Patty, who's a mental health nurse in Loudoun County. The first time I met Patty, she told me she joined the union because she remembers growing up in Michigan that she was able to have food on the table because of the union. And I said, "Oh, your father was a auto worker." And she said, "No, my dad was a doctor." I said, "He was in a union?" She said, "No, but because everyone in the community had strong wages and health care because of the auto unions, he as a doctor was able to provide a good life for Patty and her family." And so I think it's an example of how when we have strong unions, they work for everybody in the economy, whether they're in a union or not. And we are losing that, and it's very intentional. It's the result of a 30-year attack of big corporations, the Koch brothers and others who funded lots of policy think tanks, who funded a lot of politicians, a lot of ballot drives to limit the power of working people. And when you see an effort to limit collective bargaining, as you did in Wisconsin, when you see an effort to attack or to push right to work, as we have here in Virginia, make no mistake, it's about limiting the power of working people to create a better economy for everyone.
Absolutely. And the pay gap grows larger and larger, and I think we saw with the Bernie Sanders campaign and the people who flocked to his campaign that young people, the millennial generation, saying there's not an equal opportunity for us. We will not ever have what our parents have, and we can't see even a path out of where we are to a middle class lifestyle. Maya, how do you think we harness the Bernie Sanders, tsunami into something where people understand that unions are part of the solution for this.
You know, one thing I like to share with people is that when you look at literature and you look at numbers and data, and there's no disconnect between the decline of the middle class and the decline of unions, and at the same time decline in public school funding. And you see all of these things that are, you know, the phrase to, you know, lift yourself up by your bootstraps. You see that, and it's becoming more and more impossible to have that story of someone who just rose up out of poverty and got themselves to college and got this incredible job and is now a millionaire. We're past that period in our society, unfortunately, because all of these safety nets that were created for middle class, even for lower income and middle class families, have slowly but surely eroded. And I think, you know, one way, and for me the biggest way to change that is to use the power of your vote. And I know it's so cliche, right? Like, just vote. I mean, we hear all these slogans, but this is a real thing, and we're faced with the most contentious election a presidential election that we've ever seen. And we're faced with, as David mentioned, you know, Koch brothers money that's eroding all of these things. And we're looking at elections that are decided by smaller and smaller and smaller margins by people who have really strong voting traditions in their families. And that's not, you know, that doesn't represent everyone.
Oh, that is so true. And I think, you know, talking from the perspective, I'm a Democrat, and I love the fact that we have a very diverse party that includes lots of people who have found a home here. However, they don't necessarily vote reliably, or when they say I vote in every election, they mean every presidential election, and not for their state offices, their city councils, or their board of supervisors. And I think that's a challenge that we will continue to face as we go forward, is taking these new Americans, these new voters, you know, these new wage earners, and bringing them up to where they understand that voting is both a right and a responsibility. So join us when we come back. We are going to be talking with Maya Castillo and David Broder when we return about the role of unions in building a stronger economy for all of us here in Virginia.
One day these rats were playing in the woods. Wanted some matches and that's no good. Listen to smoke before you give it a try. Only you. Don't play with matches. Don't play with fire. Cause there's nothing very funny about ripped off money. Nothing very nice on a homeless mind. So if a gorgeous force is what you desire, don't play with matches. Don't play with fire. Yeah.
Only you can prevent wildfires.
Fire.
Why don't you just wash your car at home?
When I wash my car, everything runs down the street and down into the storm drains. With all the chemicals in the soaps and waxes, the last thing I want to do is poison my own drinking water.
At least here, it's all contained and recycled on site.
That's why I also take my car in for oil changes instead of doing it myself. I might take a chance on spilling stuff.
You know what the best part is?
What?
More time to kick back and watch the game.
How far would you go to protect the planet?
I want you to build an ark.
Here we go. Okay, that's good. Oh, okay. Ow!
Maybe there's another way.
People, the flood is imminent!
Is it too much to ask for a little precipitation?
Go to fightglobalwarming.com to find out what you and your community can do to reduce global warming pollution.
Somewhere around the world, there are men and women of the armed forces risking their lives, helping rebuild communities after natural disasters, collecting toys for needy children, tutoring kids in school. These are your sons and daughters who work to keep us safe, secure, and free. Dedicated men and women who put their country first.
We're back to the Inside Scoop. Here again, your host.
Welcome back. I'm Catherine Reed, your host for Inside Scoop tonight. Joining me from SEIU is David Broder and Maya Castillo. Thank you both for being here. So let's talk about good public policy, because I'm always wanting to talk on this show about good public policy and how we make it. It's kind of like people are like, oh, I don't want to see how the sausage is made. No, really, you do want to see how the sausage is made, because all of us, every individual citizen has a role to play in good public policy. And some of the things that Maya, you mentioned earlier about a focus on quality, affordable child care, health care, immigration reform. How about criminal justice reform? And people don't necessarily think immediately, oh, unions have, how are they involved in that? But policy is actually made on a federal level, a state level, and on a local level. And we've got examples of all of that right now. So let's talk about things like health care, just to pluck one. We've had a challenge in the Commonwealth of Virginia with Medicaid expansion, for instance, is just one example. How does the union work? What role do you all play in trying to get better public policy, specifically, let's say, around healthcare?
I think healthcare is a great example and an issue that we've done a lot of work on. I'll tell you a brief story. I was at the vice presidential debate in Farmville the other week, and I was there with one of our union members, a home care provider named Charlene Bright, who lives in Richmond, who 10 years ago worked with Tim Kaine when he was governor to expand home care to cover more older adults and people with disabilities, and to raise wages for the first time ever to start to lift home care workers out of poverty. And she was there in the debate, and Mike Pence was bringing out this tired old talking point around Obamacare is the worst bill ever, and scored some cheap political points, I think, with his side of the aisle. And Charlene whispered over to me, leaned over and said, if it weren't for Obamacare, I wouldn't be alive. And as we talked both before and after, Charlene has diabetes, and so she was denied health care coverage for years. She applied and no one would accept her because it was a pre-existing condition. She got it for the first time under Obamacare, and when she started going to the doctor, had a routine mammogram and discovered 2 lumps in her breast. But discovered breast cancer early enough that she had surgery, and she's alive. She is alive today, and she is the first person who would tell you that we need to make it better, that we need to lower costs. But Obamacare saved her life. And so to answer your question about what's the role we play, I think in part our members are able to tell their real life stories to cut through a lot of the rhetoric. You can say Obamacare is the worst bill ever if you're up on stage, maybe. But I dare Mike Pence to come down and to say it to Charlene Bright's face. And I think that is the power when working people can come together, can tell their stories, and meet with legislators one-on-one. It's a lot harder to put a narrow ideology over good policy.
And is that something that you do? Because I know your members are very active in getting out in the community, from door knocking to lobby day. I mean, is that kind of your bailiwick, Maya?
That is definitely something that I do, and particularly in the healthcare venue. My own personal story is that I was diagnosed when I was 21 years old. I was diagnosed with lupus, and when it became time for me to find a job, the only thing, or I shouldn't say the only thing I could do, but I was very conscious that if I didn't find a job that accepted people with pre-existing conditions, that I would be bankrupt with medical treatments. And I did find a job. I found a job in the public sector, but obviously the public sector is limited in many ways. And had I not done that, I really don't know what my life would be like right now. And I've talked to members all the time and encourage them to tell their stories. And one of the ways that we can help is by connecting our members with their elected officials, whether at the local level, state level, federal level, and the other thing too is also by holding those people that we help elect and those people that we talk to, we can hold them accountable. They have told us that they support working families, so how? Show us with their votes. And how do we re-elect them? And I think it's a really important thing that union members can not only mobilize themselves, but also reach out and talk to their friends and neighbors and learn how to do that and learn how to share their stories, because some of these stories, like mine and like Charlene's, can be very difficult to tell. And I hope I can just play a small role in facilitating those conversations for folks.
And I do think those personal stories in committee meetings, where you can get people to step up in a committee hearing room, which is very intimidating with all these legislators sitting up there, and to tell their stories, so that you put a human face and human outcomes and human drama into the policy that they are considering. I think those one-on-one things make a lot of difference. But what has been the reception just to the idea that your union is organizing? I mean, how is that received among legislators in Richmond?
I think, as you say, stories are tremendously powerful, but you also need a little power behind those stories. And so I think there are legislators that we do need to hold accountable, and stories alone aren't going to do that. And so the power of organizing, the power of bringing more people into a union, into political engagement. I'll give you an example. Johnny Joanna, the late delegate, was the one Democrat in the House of Delegates who routinely voted against the interests of working people, who routinely voted against the interests of his own district. He voted against Medicaid expansion, even though it helped thousands of his own community members. He voted against raising the minimum wage. He was the only one to do that. And so we partnered with several other groups. We told our stories. We went to his office. And when he wouldn't even meet with us, then we made sure to support a primary challenge and put Steve Heretic into office.
Yeah, that was amazing, because I sit on the board of Equality Virginia, and I sit on the PAC board of NARAL Pro-Choice Virginia. That, to me, was one of the most awesome organizing efforts I have ever seen for organizations, statewide organizations, to come together in a specific district to put in a more responsive legislator. I mean, that was, for me, very powerful.
And I think it gave me a lot of faith in democracy. And I'll tell you a little secret, it wasn't that hard. We started that campaign about 4 weeks out in the primary. The incumbent had $200,000 and had a huge cash advantage. But what we had was the right issues on our side, and we had people who were willing to go out, union members, community members, some of the members of the groups you just talked about, working together to knock on doors and tell that story. And so in the matter of 4 weeks, shy of $200,000 compared to the opposition, we were able to win and elect someone who's going to be more responsive to needs of their community. So I mentioned that to say we did it once, we can do it again. I think we probably do need to do it again.
I think it was, anytime you have a success, behavior that is rewarded is repeated. And I think when those people went out and something wonderful happened, you can probably ask them to do it again, because they're going to be like, oh, look what we did.
Absolutely.
So do you have a legislative agenda for 2017, or how does that work? How do you choose what issues you support and what groups you support or what bills you support?
Sure, and so I'll let Maya in a moment talk about how we're going to win that agenda, but a little bit on the agenda. So as with anything we do at the union, our agenda is coming straight from our members. I think that's why it's so powerful. It's issues that resonate. And so what we will do, we are going full strength on this election, because we think this is the most important election that we faced. And we'll go all the way until November 8th. And on November 9th, all our members will wake up and they'll find in their inbox an email with a survey. What are the issues now that we've had our say in the election? It's time to hold politicians accountable, truly whoever wins. And so we'll get that feedback. We'll survey all our members in email and phone calls and meetings, and we'll take their responses and we'll develop an agenda, I think a really comprehensive agenda about, as we say, building an economy that works for everyone. And it's from our members that we've identified issues that people didn't always think of as union issues, but that were deeply impactful to our members. And I'll tell you, one is student loan debt. Our members, just like 1 million Virginians across the state, are being crushed by student loan debt. And we wouldn't necessarily have had that on our agenda if it hadn't been for surveying our members. But it's amazing what happens when you ask working people what do they care about, and then what are they willing to fight for.
So how will you, the email goes out, Maya, and then you get the survey results back, and then what happens?
So the email goes out and we get the survey results back, and we start planning for 2017. Actually, we've already started planning a little bit for 2017, but we are very mindful of the fact that we could go into a legislative session early next year that attacks those things that our members stand for. And our members are very mindful of that as well. and they realize the importance of going out and talking to legislators, going out and talking to their folks at the local level, and really making sure that all of those people that either we helped elect or we opposed in some cases know that they are people, right? That this isn't about just a number on a sheet of paper in a budget. And then we will also work with our community organizations to make sure that all of the people who became engaged through this presidential election are also part of those budget hearings and conversations with legislators. And we're continually organizing our communities and our members so that we can fight back through the legislative session and immediately switch gears for a very crucial governor's race.
So do you guys, pardon me, do you guys do a lobby day?
We do. Every year we do a lobby day. What started a decade ago as 7 home care workers and myself meeting in a church basement and then walking over to the General Assembly has grown to hundreds of union members, their families, their kids, which is the best thing to see, and our community partners, as Maya said, coming together every year, meeting with our legislators one-on-one. But we also see Lobby Day as just one event in a series of how do we hold elected officials accountable. That really that goes all year round. We know that the best time to get our legislators is when they're not in Richmond, but when they're home in the community and where we can talk to them and really share those stories and work with them on developing budgets, developing bills that are going to support working families.
Bill development is very important, and I know a lot of the legislators do town hall meetings specifically, so just like you canvass your members, they're canvassing people in the community to tell them what is a priority and what are they working on. And so I know that a lot of legislators right now are drafting bills. They're in the process. I've talked to a number of them because I've got a wish list too about things that I'd like to see them address in specific bills. A lot of them, I forget, it's several thousand, 3,000 bills or something they look at in 6 weeks, and so a lot of them get dropped by the wayside really early on in the piece, and it gets winnowed down to a very few. And so when we come back in the next segment, one of the things I really want to talk about too is some of the specific things that you would like to see prior to your email, maybe things from last year that didn't get a lot of traction that maybe we'll be looking at again as we come back for this legislative session. So please join us after this break. I want to talk with Maya Castillo and David Broder of SEIU about some of the things that they are working on starting November 9th after we elect the next president. So join us after the break.
Around the world, 1 out of every 3 women will be beaten or otherwise abused in their lifetime, often by a family member or loved one. A future free from violence. It's all she's ever wished for.
Did you know you have the power to stop children from joining gangs? You can help a father find a job and home for his family. You can assist a woman who can't afford the medicine she needs to live and the home she can't live without. You can choose to make a difference in our community. Support Volunteers of America, and you can help improve the lives of nearly 2 million Americans each year with programs and services that help individuals and families overcome their challenges to become as independent as possible. Support the programs that are working in our community. Contact Volunteers of America today. Call 1-800-899-0089.
For some folks, saving for the future is easy, but for you, it might take a little more effort. Saving for your future is your responsibility, and there's a lot to save for.
I never thought of that.
Like your child's education, perhaps uncovered medical expenses, or just to be sure you can live the way you want when you retire. The time is now to save for tomorrow? Save now or work forever? The choice is yours. Choose to save.
We're back to the Inside Scoop. Here again, your host.
Welcome back to Inside Scoop. I'm your host, Catherine Reed. Joining me tonight, David Broder and Maya Castillo of SEIU. 512 is the local union here. Thank you both for being here. When we went on break, we were talking about some bills that seem to keep resurfacing every year because they didn't really get enough traction in the current session, and so they are, you make runs at it over and over and over again until you get something. So what are some of those things that you might be working on in 2017?
So I think 2017 is going to be an incredibly important session for working families, not least of all because we have a huge budget deficit. And so overarching, we have to make sure that this $1.5 billion budget shortfall doesn't get balanced on the backs of working families. And I hope everyone's very vigilant about that, because when we're giving huge tax breaks to coal companies, when we're giving huge tax breaks so that people can buy yachts in Virginia, we need to make sure that we are not, again, balancing the budget on the backs of working families. But I think there are also some opportunities to be forward-looking and proactive and in ways that will really support not just working families, but our whole economy. So on student loan debt, which I mentioned earlier, Delegate Marcus Simon had put in some tremendous bills that are being studied now, and we look forward to those coming back. Very common sense things, like could there be one-stop shopping for a place to go to get information about student loan debt? I know that when I was in college, I didn't know all that much about financing. I know embarrassingly little now. And so could there be a resource where folks could get more information? The second is, why can't you take your student loan debt and refinance it?
I don't understand that either. You can refinance any other kind of debt in this country. I mean, Elizabeth Warren's anger on this issue is so justified. I don't know why every American is not outraged by why students have to pay more or are locked into these high interest loans without the ability to refinance. This is crazy to me.
That's right. So we need to recognize that for what it is, which is a special loophole that's hurting families. And it's hurting young students, it's hurting older adults who are trying to retrain for a better economy. So those are two bills that we look forward to working on. We also, we've made some real strides on home care, we mentioned earlier. And again, I don't know a family that isn't dealing with home care one way or another, whether it's an aging parent, an aging grandparent, or a child with autism. And so we've made some strides starting to lift home care workers out of poverty, which makes it easier for families to recruit and retain good workers. But we also have some real challenges. We haven't been able to pass a paid sick days bill for home care workers. And if there's anyone you would want to not come into
your
work
place
sick, it'd be your home care worker.
Right.
The legislature also, and there's a great article in the Richmond Times-Dispatch today, the legislature put on a cap on the number of hours that home care workers could work, simply to try to avoid paying the little amount of overtime pay that would be required. And it is policies like that that are downright hurtful, specifically to older adults and people with disabilities with high needs. And so those are some of the policies that we need to overturn and then advance and expand home care. And I'm optimistic that that we'll be able to see some success in 2017 if folks are going to get involved and contact their legislators.
No, that would be great. Anything on your hit parade there, Maya? Anything special you want? A wish list.
Well, right now, a lot of my focus is dedicated not only to the presidential race, but a few things that we're seeing down ballot from the presidential race. You know,
yes, indeed.
Those races that people either don't know how to vote on or ignore in favor of the big ticket item. And for me right now, a lot of it is on question one.
Which is the right to work. So poorly named because, well, it's kind of like the meals tax, which we'll also talk, how you label something gives people right away this perception. Who would vote against the right to work and who would vote for a tax? I mean, simply naming it a certain thing gives people a perspective right out of the starting gate.
Right. Words are important, right?
Yes, they are.
And, on this one, what I like to say, and I know a lot of my brothers and sisters in unions like to say, it's actually called the right to work for less.
I like that.
Yeah. It's a little better, right? It's a little more truthful.
It's a little more descriptive. It's more descriptive of what it is, right?
Right. I mean, people in so-called right-to-work states earn less money than those in union states. They don't attract it doesn't attract jobs. It doesn't build our economy at all. And so, question one will enshrine this in
the Constitution.
In the Constitution.
And amending our Constitution is ridiculous. We amend that a Constitution at the drop of a hat. And I don't understand what the point of that even is.
And I think we've seen efforts to amend the Constitution that frankly are just based on fear. The last time we saw was to amend the Constitution to enshrine traditional marriage.
Oh, Marshall Newman 2006. Believe me, I live in that world.
Right, and so those same folks then, who were terrified of the idea of people loving who they love, are now terrified of the idea that working people could come together and try to lift wages for everyone. It's the exact same attack on people's rights. And Maya is exactly right. Those who live in states with this kind of law, as we see on question one, earn $1,500 a year less. And that's everyone, whether you're in a union or not. And if you're a woman, if you're a person of color, you earn far less than that. And not only is it about wages, we also see that people are far less safe because they don't have the same robust worker safety laws enforced by unions, enforced by union contracts. You're more likely to be in an accident. You're more likely to die on the job if you live in a state with a law like question one. And we need to stop playing politics with people's safety.
Oh, I agree. And here's the other thing too. A robust economy should have a place in it for every kind of company and every kind of industry that wants to be here. Enshrining something like this in the Constitution, you are scaring away companies who are like, no, I don't think so. And to your point about how it impacts, I mean, the story about the fact that a doctor makes a better living when people can pay for a doctor? Well, think about everybody else in an economy. Think about hairdressers or nail salons or restaurants and all the other ways that people who have enough money to be able to afford things beyond just the rent and the gas and the lights on, right? So I think that becomes really important for us to consider. In a robust economy, there has to be a place for every kind of working relationship.
Absolutely, and we see in right-to-work states, I mean, companies don't go to right-to-work states because for so many reasons that economy doesn't work. That economy doesn't work, the schools aren't well funded, we're not growing a skilled workforce, and therefore can't provide workers for the types of jobs that these billion-dollar corporations are looking for. And so, it's this cycle. And as for me, as a mother, I want my children, young girls, to be able to grow up and earn the same as their male counterparts, earn the same as people who live in states that right to work isn't a reality. So, even looking forward, it's really important that this is not a constitutional amendment.
And talking about funding the public schools, that takes us to another issue on the Fairfax County ballot. The Amendment 1 is actually on everybody's ballot in the Commonwealth of Virginia, but Fairfax voters have a little something extra, and that is the meals tax. Again, so poorly named because people are like, what is the tax and why would I vote for it? But, so you don't understand the impact, you don't understand the outcome, you don't understand the benefit. All you understand is somebody's asking me to vote for tax on myself.
That's right. And we talked earlier about good public policy. You said you like good public policy. Well, if you like good public policy, the meals tax is phenomenally good public policy, and it's the best possible investment for local Fairfax families. For a few pennies on the dollar, we're going to be able to reduce class sizes. We're going to be able to keep the best teachers in our school system. We're going to be able to make sure that our libraries can reopen at the hours they used to be available at. We can make sure that we have the best parks and recs for our kids, for our older adults, and we're going to be able to relieve some of the burden that's fallen exclusively on the shoulders of property owners and paying property taxes. That's what the meals tax is going to allow us to do. And it's also going to, if any evidence in Arlington and Alexandria show us, is it's actually going to boost spending on restaurants, and it's going to be able to boost the take-home pay of servers at restaurants.
Well, and that's the thing that really kind of blows my mind is how restaurant owners have spun this to their employees. And they have, because I've talked to these people who are being told by certain restaurant owners to push the fact that, their livelihood hangs in the balance and they won't. I mean, all of it is just based on magical thinking. Not data, not research, not anything. Just, this is a great talking point. And you know, it's pretty terrible when you're somebody who works in a restaurant and your boss is telling you to do something. And like, what do? Either you do it and keep your job, or maybe you find someplace else to work. And I don't think that's a very good choice to have to make.
No, that's exactly right. And I would take the restaurant owners' fears about their workers' interests a lot more seriously if they weren't paying them $2 and change an hour. I would also take it a lot more seriously if they were more concerned about the safety of their workers. A study came out last week that showed in the fast food industry, which they point to those jobs as being available for folks, and McDonald's in particular, that has a 60% higher sexual harassment rate than in any other industry. And so we need to make sure that workers are safe on the job. We need to make sure that workers are able to take home enough pay to raise their kids to have a better life. And the truth is that by having a meals tax, we're going to have better schools for their children. We're going to have better public infrastructure, better transportation, better roads so that they can go get the kind of education, get the kind of jobs that they need.
You know, I just wish that on the ballot it said property tax relief referendum. Property tax relief referendum, because that would be viewed entirely differently. But from the point of view, and I know John Cook was on an earlier show talking about, and he is quite passionate about making sure that teachers are paid a marketplace rate, which they are not in Fairfax. Fairfax is number 4 in the Commonwealth of Virginia. The first 3 districts, Alexandria, Arlington, and I forget the third one, all of them have meals tax. And John Cook is quite passionate about the fact that you have to pay people what they're doing, a very important job, probably one of the most important jobs. Why are we trying to shortchange professional teachers and then tie this all back around to student debt? What did those teachers invest to get a degree or an advanced degree to even stand in front of your child's classroom to teach them? I'm perplexed by this.
And I feel so fortunate. I'm so lucky that we absolutely adore both of our child's teachers. I have 2 daughters, and their teachers are spectacular. I also know that I could write an email to one of those teachers and get a response now, this evening, on the weekend, on a Sunday afternoon. So they are working incredibly hard to make sure that my daughters and everyone else in those classes have a really great education. I feel very fortunate. So yes, I absolutely agree with that.
Well, so when we come back, we're going to talk a little bit more in our last segment about how we can better understand the importance of unions, what SEIU is doing for their members, and how they are helping all of us to invest in better public policy for a stronger, more robust economy here in our Commonwealth.
I need a job.
Necesito trabajo. I would like to speak English better. Me gustaría hablar inglés mejor.
I want to be a U.S. citizen.
Quisiera ser ciudadano de los Estados Unidos.
For over 35 years,
por más de 35 años,
the Hispanic Committee of Virginia has been serving our community.
El Comité Hispano de Virginia ha estado sirviendo a nuestra comunidad.
Job training and placement,
capacitación, ayuda para conseguir trabajo,
education for children and adults,
educación para niños y adultos,
immigration, naturalization, and medical referrals,
ayuda para los procesos de inmigración y naturalización y orientación sobre médicos
are a small part of what we do.
Son solo una pequeña parte de lo que hacemos.
For help, information, or to volunteer,
para ayuda, información o para ofrecerse como voluntario,
contact the Hispanic Committee of Virginia.
Comuníquese con el Comité Hispano de Virginia,
helping everyone participate more fully in American society.
Ayudando a todos a participar plenamente en la sociedad norteamericana.
Where's yours?
Would you notice if you were missing half your kidney function? According to the National Kidney Foundation, 20 million people have chronic kidney disease, and 20 million more may be at risk and not even know it. Anyone with high blood pressure, diabetes, or family history of chronic kidney disease is at risk. Early diagnosis is vitally important. To get the whole story, talk to your doctor and visit the National Kidney Foundation at kidney.org or call for a free brochure. Because when it comes to chronic kidney disease, you might not know the half.
We're back to the Inside Scoop. Here again, your host.
Welcome back to Inside Scoop. I'm your host, Catherine Reed. Joining me here in our last segment from SEIU, which stands for Service Employees International Union, in case you weren't here at the beginning of the show, is David Broder and Maya Castillo. Thank you both. When we took a break, I was talking about how perplexed I was at the fact that people don't make a connection between the investment teachers make in getting the education required to teach in the classroom and the fact that if we cannot pay them a living wage, how in the world do they afford to feed their family, pay their mortgage, and repay their student loans? To me, this is not a mystery. This is like a connect the dots. And yet we are still having in Fairfax County this hugely protracted argument over whether or not 4 cents on the dollar is something teachers in this county deserve in order to create a world-class school system that impacts not only the companies who choose to move here, but the property values of every home in these school districts, whether they have children in school or not. What am I missing?
No, that's right. My wife and I moved into Fairfax County because of the schools. We wanted our 2 daughters to have the best possible education. I had a great public education growing up. I wanted the same for my girls. I want the same for Maya's girls. I want the same for all our children. And yet we see that years and years of budget cuts mean that the schools, they have done everything they can to spend money as efficiently as they can, but they are losing teachers every day. In the same way that our county is losing great social workers. They're losing great children's librarians. They are losing wonderful mental health professionals and nurses. All of them are going to Arlington. All of them are going to Alexandria or going to Prince William, in part because these teachers, these professionals can't afford to live in Fairfax County anymore. So this is a problem that's only going to get worse if we don't do something. And it's time to step up and lead, and it's time to pass the meals tax.
Oh, I definitely think so. And so you talked, too, about the fact that some people are living in Prince William County because they can't afford to live here. Transportation then becomes this other huge hurdle to overcome. But, you know, again, Alexandria and Arlington, who are number 1 and 2 for teacher pay, have a meals tax. Every city in Virginia and over half the counties in Virginia have a meals tax, and there are people who are acting like this is the most unbelievable suggestion they've ever heard of. And you know, Fairfax County is pretty educated. I mean, the people who live here are educated people. So, Maya, explain it to me. Go ahead.
I wish I could. Then I could answer all the world's problems. But I just feel, you know, the thing that struck me right now when you mentioned people who are living in Prince William County and have to commute. And what does that do? You know, a lot of people talk about what our, you know, families look like and how important our families are. And what about our teachers' families? You know, what about school staff who commutes however long it takes to get to their school, does an incredibly dedicated and incredible job with our children that live in Fairfax County, and then has to spend all of that time away from their family, just in the commute alone. And so, you know, it's yet another way that we could potentially leave some of the kids behind, and that they're the children of our teachers.
Right.
And can I just say, I think we're seeing every day how the Chamber of Commerce is no longer speaking for small business owners. I talk to all the time small business owners, whether it's Ned and Buzz's in Richmond or my friend John Wood at the 29 Diner here in Fairfax County, who recognize that they have to pay their workers more. And yes, we need to raise the minimum wage, or that a meals tax is going to support the community and it's good for them. And I think whether it's the Chamber of Commerce or the NFIB, they are really speaking for massive corporate interests and no longer speaking for local business owners, and really standing in the way of good policy. And I think that's a shame. And I would urge people to call on their local chambers and to say we really need to go back into the realm of good policy and supporting our communities. Because I think at the local level, members of the chamber really want wonderful schools for everyone's kids,
I
want
think they
good
do.
roads, because they know that's the right thing to do, and they know it's what's going to support their local businesses.
But you know something, the thing about a chamber is like anything else. They have members, and their members have demands. And you know, you do this, you're a union, you have members, you do this balancing act, which is we do something on a macro level, and then we have to listen to our members. And so I don't know how they balance the pressures at a larger level or at a more grassroots level.
I think we know the answer. I think they are listening to the Koch brothers of the world and not listening to the 29 diners of the world. And I have to put in a plug for the 29 diners.
You know, John Wood,
okay.
now I want you to, we need to just, lots of love for John Wood. Lots of love for John Wood. He is, you know, one man, one historic diner, and it's tiny, and it's in Fairfax City, which is where I live. And the fact that he feels as one person and one business owner that he can change the outcome. Oh, if every person woke up every day saying, what I do today can actually impact my community for the better. I can make the difference. Just me, and pulling people together, and to your point, organizing, because organizing is key. And I think as we roll toward the election day on November 8th, organizing may also end up being instrumental in who gets into the White House. You know, we haven't really talked about the presidential election, but I think now is time to talk about what scenario you see in a Trump White House versus a Hillary White House, and how people should be considering their vote.
Well, we're very lucky that we have Maya, an amazing team of our members who are out there every day mobilizing the community to get out and vote in this historic election.
You know, I've talked about my daughters. I talk about them all the time. But what does a Trump presidency mean for my family? Well, my 8-year-old the other day asked me, if Donald Trump wins, do I have their passports ready? Because they're Mexican, and Donald Trump is going to kick them out. And so where are we going to go?
I think that's very real for a lot of children.
And that feels, it's real for children, and it's real for families. And, you know, we lose. Our communities just lose. There's no, it would be very, very hard to go back from that kind of loss. And that's why our members, you know, I've heard a million similar stories. I've heard so much fear, so much uncertainty, so many questions from our members about what happens to their families. And so for us, I mean, for our members, this is not,
a lot hangs in the balance.
A lot hangs in the balance.
To me, this election was about Saturday. On Saturday, Maya took her kids, and we took our kids, and our friend Lenore took her son Willie, and we went to Cox Farms, as a lot of families did.
I've done that with mine too, many years ago.
And they were all there on Saturday. The lines showed that. But it was about, we could see all our kids playing there. And in terms of this election, this is a clear choice. And it's not just about Trump being horrible. It's about Hillary Clinton having tremendous plans, and movements really pushing her to have great plans. So we have a candidate in Hillary Clinton who has a plan to make sure that none of us pay more than 10% of our incomes in childcare, and I'm paying a lot more than that now.
Absolutely.
It's about a candidate who has a plan to make college tuition debt-free for everyone and tuition-free for many, and a candidate who has no such plan. It's about one candidate, Hillary Clinton, who wants to raise the minimum wage and support workers' rights and organizing rights for everyone, and a candidate in Donald Trump who says wages are too high and we need a national right to work law. So it's a very clear choice, and it's about a candidate in Hillary Clinton who is willing to acknowledge that we all have inherent bias and that we need to reform the criminal justice system so that our friend Lenore's son, Willie, who's black, that until his life is respected as much, until Maya's daughter's lives are respected as much as my daughter's lives are respected, we have a lot more work to do, because a living wage, and this is why this is a union issue. Fighting racism is unequivocally a union issue, because if you have a living wage, it doesn't matter if you are not safe in your own car, in your own community.
That is true. That is true. Driving here tonight, I heard on NPR the results of a survey that some higher education did with foreign students. Foreign students from other countries make up like $30 billion of income to our, I know, that stunned me. Huge, and we need them. In fact, there's 1 million foreign students here, up from 500,000 just a few years ago, because state funding, and Virginia certainly is part of this. Schools, there's a great documentary called Starving the Beast about how they're starving higher education through the legislatures giving less and less and less. So you need these foreign students because they are paying full freight. But they did this survey and said, if Donald Trump was elected presidency, how likely are you to study here in the U.S.? And then they asked the same question, if Hillary was elected president, how likely are you to come study in the U.S.? For Trump, 60% said they would likely not study here, versus 4% for Hillary. Well, you can understand why they did this survey. I did after I heard the enormous number, the amount of dollars coming into our universities and colleges in this country from foreign students. And they are clearly not looking with favor upon students deciding they are not welcome here under a Trump presidency, because then all of those dollars just flow right back out of this country someplace else. And again, I don't think these things are necessarily on a lot of people's radars. Like, why would they be?
You know, and we've heard this, we've all heard this, but we talk about Donald Trump, or Donald Trump talks about making America great again. And the fact of the matter is that we live in an incredible country, and we have a very clear choice, and we have a candidate who will improve an already great country, or we have someone who doesn't believe it's that great. So I don't see that there's a real choice.
And so that's why our members are out every day. Our members are out every weekend. Folks giving up time away from the families, or what we love to see is our members bring their families. We bring our kids canvassing, sometimes happy, sometimes some tears. Although I'll tell you, no one ever slams the door in your face when you've got a little princess.
Right. That's right. We've got Lucy standing there going, hello.
It certainly helps. So that's why we'll be knocking doors. SEIU members will knock over 100,000 doors in this election, and particularly making sure that historically disenfranchised communities are out there voting, making sure that our sisters and brothers in the Black community, the AAPI community, the Latino community, hear that their vote matters, because on the other side, they're being told not to show up. Right? They're being told that they're not welcome. And so we need to make sure that everybody is welcome in our democracy. We need to make sure that everybody is welcome in our economy. And we'll be working tremendously hard up until November 8th. And then on November 9th, just as hard to hold President Clinton accountable to that agenda.
That's right. I thank you so much for your efforts. I really do. And today was a very auspicious occasion, because October 17th was the last day for people to register to vote here in Virginia. So I hope everybody out there registered to vote. I've already voted absentee in person, and that's an option for all you folks out there. So pay attention. November 8th, who ends up in our White House has a tremendous effect, not just for union members, but for all of us who are interested in building a very robust economy here in the Commonwealth of Virginia.